All things considered, when you look at the structure of this episode and the different chunks that was being presented, the pacing was spot on for the number of topics, the number of moments that were shown. But when I take a step back and look at from the conversation with Emilko at the very start of the episode, lasted a good third, if not almost half of the episode, talking about what the living dolls and shadows truly represent, what the purpose of the shadows are. That could, in any other episode, feel like its own big moment. But that was only a part of the episode. You have the whole introduction of brainwashing happening again, with them kind of coming to the conclusion, thanks to Kate, that it's not the same brainwashing, because obviously the effects are different. The fact of the matter is, it probably was just regular coffee. It was more of they think they're getting their peace of mind, and from the shadows, one of them is using their mass mind control. So it's interesting to have that. So that should be an episode as it stands. But then you get the whole showdown where, I just love Sean and John, man. They can have their own spin-off anime, it feels like. And the whole idea that they just fully are convinced. Okay, we found the culprit. Person sleeps all day, has to be the one going out all night. As soon as his logic came out, I knew it wasn't them. Not only did this episode show Master Rogue with a more feminine voice, it also just felt like it would be too obvious of a clue sort of a thing. But I thought it was crazy to see the realization of what they were doing, and they had a pretty believable excuse and alibi, all things considered, with a cliffhanger of, hey, the big boys want to go talk to you. Is it because they're asking questions, or is it because he's getting promoted? I don't know. Anything could happen. There's 3 pretty large chunks of this episode, but it almost feels like with the amount of dialogue, with the amount of content that we saw, I don't know, like at least an episode and a half it felt like that I watched. And this isn't me saying like the pacing was rushed or anything and that's why it feels like that long. No, it just felt so much longer than 22 minutes, and to see everything that we just saw and the topics brought up. Hell, there's more thought-provoking content in this episode than a lot of shows airing in their entire run, I feel like. Just look at the conversation with 2 living dolls, 2 humans. They have the realization now and can have the conversation that they are humans. Where did they start out? What was their jobs? Looking at their current talents and the talents of those that they consider friends. What were they doing? It's a little goofy, it's a little childlike. But it's for the first time they get to think about, what is happiness? Is happiness being a living doll for someone that they do trust in a group of people that they very much don't trust? The whole Milko Kate thing is adorable, it's great. The Sean and John thing, amazing and great. But when you think about where they start out and who they truly are, how much does that trust take you? Because as they're talking in this episode, they're considering the fact that the shadows themselves don't have really any memories prior to being introduced to their doll. Very much it seems like they are just a shadowy blob that basically feeds on their identity, and the more they come into contact with each other, the more they become that person, probably to the point of eventually wanting to fully take over. And the whole idea that essentially if you don't build up that connection, as seen by the whole rum situation and the inability to talk with Shirley, that shadow will end up ceasing to exist, and the failure of a living doll will then become the veiled doll. So there's some hope there, because they're like, oh, this person we haven't seen in so long, we can probably still find them. They're probably walking next to us every day without us realizing. But the idea of bringing up such a heavy topic of you can trust your Shadow Master because they literally have your best interest in heart. But when you consider the fact of where they started out and what their original purpose was designed for, you have to wonder, is there an ability that can make these shadows do things they don't want to, even if they say they have Emilko's back or they have so-and-so's back, right? And I thought it was interesting having a moment that, all things considered, was pretty carefree. They got to laugh, they got to feel like they had a choice at freedom for once. But when you look at the grand picture and what everything really means, there's a lot of frightening thoughts about where they start out as and where the end goal of the shadows truly are, for how much they want to take over their identity. Does there ever come a point where a shadow finally cracks the code and becomes full-on them, and they no longer need that kind of, picture that they can copy off as? There's some frightening thoughts that could pop up with that. And then the whole idea of the coffee scene was brilliant, because they had 3 or 4 days, I think it was 4 days, before they were supposed to be able to have more. But the fact of the matter is they can't go to the adults and say, we messed up, so what can they do to kind of cover their asses? Well, they give them generic coffee. It tastes different, and really they're not going to know the difference because they have it so infrequently. But the idea of controlling from the distance is really cool because it gives the illusion that the effects are still there, and the idea of like this symbol of giving it to them every so often with these ceremonies. But as we saw when it came to Kate, she had one hell of a time trying to get Emilio to calm down. As before, she was very obedient. Here, she was just gung-ho, got it clean. She was literally getting dragged across the screen, even tied up to a chair, like it just wasn't working. And rather than being able to force the water down her throat, she just became a sprinkler system. It's crazy to see just the routes that the Star Bearers are going down and just what it really represents, because when we say we have 4 days left, 4 days is a pretty long time to potentially uncover Master Robe, potentially uncover who's responsible for so much and maybe prevent. But now, not only are they finding ways to give them it sooner, they also are highly observing, meaning you can't spit it out. You have to gulp it, otherwise they know you can't be trusted, and that's pretty damn frightening. And then with the end of the episode, with the whole, like, I love the hamster wheel, it's kind of genius using the shadows of, like, having a picture of, like, what they go after, right? The phase, and it, like, basically charges at it as it charges up its electricity. Of course, you get the whole, like, I'm gonna try to impress moment, and maybe it backfired to the point of, oh, why is Ollie and Oliver saying, like, hey, you gotta go talk to so-and-so? Like, is it because you were asking questions, or is it gonna be something positive? It's Shadow's house. You have no damn idea what cliffhangers mean. The most ominous of cliffhangers could be a damn birthday celebration for all we know. We really, really don't know. But what an episode of Shadow's House. We're now officially halfway through this second season, and it's not letting up. I love this arc. I love the mystery. And there's definitely a lot of questions surrounding Master Robe. The way they're presenting Master Robe in this episode had a more feminine approach to it. They're, like, the voice filter felt a lot more feminine, but based on what other characters have said and the looks in previous episodes, I'm not sure if that's actually a female under there. And I think it's so fun talking with people in the comments section because they're like, you know, I was fully convinced it was so-and-so, but after this episode it feels impossible. And that's kind of how it feels. And that's what makes the mystery of this character, who seemingly is on their side, but there's that what if in the back of my mind of what if they're saying that, but eventually they pin the blame on you like it happened with the twins. Like, I don't exactly know. Like, there's a lot of mystery, a lot of setup, but a lot of thought-provoking conversations. And that's why I think a lot of us love Shadow's House. As rather than it just being, ooh, look at the torture scenes, or ooh, look at a basic-ass mystery. When you break down an episode like I just did, there is so much to love about a single episode, and that single episode makes it so much more interesting for the future of the remainder of the season. And I don't know where they're going next week. I am worried, but at the same time, when you look at the brainwashing in this episode, wasn't the worst thing, all things considered. It's a little annoying, but they still technically have their 4 days. It's just in between building up to that, they might have to deal with some shitty-ass coffee, which I guess all things considered is better than they could ask for in the predicament that they're in. But thoughts down below, theories if you got any on this crazy-ass season of Shadow's House. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. Till next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.